All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another video. So, we've covered in depth in this series a lot about adding and subtracting. So, I want to move on to talk about multiplication. And in this video, we're just going to introduce multiplication as a concept and work through some ways we can do certain types of questions. Now, in doing so, there's going to be a few parts to the multiplication series, mini topic within our computing with positive integers. And we're going to spend a lot of time just slowly talking about this idea and how it relates to some other operations we've learned. Now, by operations, I mean things like adding, subtracting, and now we're going to learn about multiplying. These are all things we know as operations. So, in this image on the left, I have I have these 8 pink circles. Now, if I wanted to count these, well, I would just think of, okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, that seems simple enough. I'm just counting. But when we count, when we go from, say, 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, so on and so forth, we can think of these as adding. Our number of these pink circles are increasing. 1, adding 1 to that gives me 2. We've increased from 1 to 2. We increase it by 1 again, that gives me 3. Increase by 1 again, that gives me 4, and so on and so forth. Now, multiplication has very deep ties to addition, and it has to do with how these numbers are grouped. And we're going to more properly define this in a second. But if I, for example, wanted to add these 8 altogether, it's kind of time consuming to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So why don't I say, well, I can see that I can group these in twos. Here, here, and here. And I can say, well, how many groups of twos do I have here? Well, I have 1, I have 2, I have 3, and I have 4. So multiplication has to do with this idea of grouping numbers and what happens when we add these. So you can think here as, now that I've grouped these, I have 4 groups of 2. So if I wanted to add these together, I would go, well, my first group of 2 plus the other group of 2 plus the third group of 2 plus the fourth group of 2. And in total, how many groups of 2 do I have? Well, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 2. This is where multiplication comes in. Because when we add a lot of the same numbers, it gets a little bit tedious when we have to do a really big. So here we're only adding 2 4 times. If I were to do this, say, 10 times or 20 times, it's going to get really annoying to go 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, right? Multiplication gives us a type of shortcut. So here, we're going to represent this addition of numbers as what we know as a multiplication. And the multiplication of 2 numbers represents a repeated addition. So this thing here that I've written up the top, I can just write as 4 times 2. Now, we have a new operation we've introduced here. We have this idea of timesing, this idea of multiplication. Now, this thing here just represents, I'll write it in a couple of ways. The notation that I've written here, this 4, this little cross here, and 2, this is like saying 4 groups of 2. I can also say this is 4 lots of 2. In my quotations. So, multiplying is just a type of addition. It's a shortcut or an abbreviation for addition. Now, hold on to that thought. It's a shortcut or abbreviation to addition. We're going to talk about that a lot more later in this video, but let's just look at representing 4 times 2. This was like adding 2 to itself 4 times. So when I say 4 times 2, that's like taking 4 groups of 2. And when I take 4 groups of 2 or 4 lots of 2, that's like saying 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 gives me 8. So 4 times 2, in essence, gives me 8. It gives me the same thing as if I were to add 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. 2 plus 2 gives me 4. 2, and that plus 2 again gives me, now just to avoid confusion, I'll write here 4 groups. Now I have 4. When I add another 2 to that, I get 6. And when I add another 2 to that, I get 8. Now that looks a little bit messy, but that's in essence what I'm doing here. I'm taking 4 lots of 2. Now, the order that we do this in actually doesn't matter. Now, if you remember when we talked about addition, we talked about this idea of commutative things. So whether we do 4 times 2 or 2 times 4, 2 groups of 4, it's going to give us the same answer. In the same way as we thought of with addition, where we it didn't matter which order we did it. Now, let me scroll down to this same image, but it's just tilted to the side. I hope you can see that. So here, instead of doing this, I've gone down to this thing here. Now, doing these, I can once again take 4 groups of 2, but can we think of an easier way we could add this? Well, instead of taking 4 groups of 2, I hope you can see this, we can also split this evenly into 2 groups of 4, or 2 times 4. This is once again saying 2 groups of 4. Hope you can see that. Sorry for the messy handwriting. There we go. 2 groups of 4. Now, if I take 2 lots of 4 or 2 groups of 4, I can just say, well, that's the same as writing 2 times 4 is the same as writing 2 groups of 4. So 4 adding to 4 again. And what does that give me? Well, that gives me, when I add 4 and 4, that gives me 8. So when I multiply, it doesn't matter which way I do this. See here I have 2 times 4. Up here I had 4 times 2. And I got the same answer. I got an 8 here and I got an 8 here. So these are commutative. The order in which I do it doesn't actually matter. And in primary school, you probably would have learnt or memorized these ideas of times tables. So we can go all the way up to 12, and you would have maybe memorized a lot of these types of multiplications. But to really understand it, we can think of multiplying as being really closely related to adding. We're taking sort of groupings of these types of numbers. So here we had 8, and I represented this as either 2 groups of 4 or 4 groups of 2, 4 lots of 2 or 2 lots of 4. So multiplication, let's define it, here. Multiplication is or multiplication, sorry, I'll write this in a different way. Multiplication of two numbers represents a repeated addition. So, if we, for example, let's look at another example, say let's do 5 times 3. My first number tells me how many repetitions I have of that addition. So this tells me how many repetitions. And this is telling me 5 repetitions or groups of my number being added. So I can actually draw this. I can visualize this. I'm saying 5 groups of 3. So let me draw I'll write my 3 counters here. So my 3 sort of little green circles. This is let's color coordinate this actually. This thing here is my 3 from here. This is the number being added, and it's being added 5 times. Now let me show that. So this green number, I have 1 group. Here's my second group. Here's my third group. Here's my fourth group. And here's my fifth group. So this thing here represents my number of groups, or how many repetitions I have. So number of reps, all right, reps short for repetitions, / groups. So here I have my 5, and I've color coordinated that with this one here. And here I have my 3. I'm taking 5 groups of 3. And when I count these all together, I have 3, 6. 3 plus 3 gives me 6. 3 plus 3 again gives me 9. Adding another 3 to that gives me 12. And adding another 3 to that finally gives me 15. So I can say that 5 times 3, 5 groups of 3 equals 15. That's what we mean by multiplying things. Now, I'll write one more definition. Multiplication is essentially a shortcut or abbreviation of addition. Its roots are in addition. It just gives us a shorthand way to write adding, but more specifically, the addition of repeated numbers. So you can see I had a bunch of these 3s which repeated 5 times. That's how I got to my 15 in the end here. So let's think about what an abbreviation is. An abbreviation in the English language is just shortening words or phrases. So think of, when I think of the word Mr., I can rewrite that. So when you get, for example, a letter in the mail, or you get an email, or anything with your title, say Mr. or Mrs., it comes in written in this shortcut way. So from Mr., I write MR. This is what we call an abbreviation here. Same as the word, for example, do not, the phrase do not. I write that in a shortcut way. I abbreviate that as don't. It's just an easier way to write the word. It's shortening it. That's what we get when we multiply, guys. If I write, for example, now let me actually leave this in the same way here. My abbreviation for, let's say, 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6, well, I have my 6 getting added. How many times is it getting added? It's getting added 4 times. 4 times. So the abbreviation for this, the shortening of this, which multiplication gives us, is writing, well, 4 lots of 6. It is an abbreviation. It is a shortened way to write something being added a certain amount of times. Now, you can't really see it here because I'm using small numbers, but you can see where it might be easier to write, instead of, let's say, 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10. I'm already getting sick of this. Plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10. Instead of writing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 added to itself 9 times, I can just write there are 9 groups of 10. And I write that with my expression of multiplication here. We have 9 groups of, or lots of, the number 10. So that's what we mean when we multiply. And we're going to go through a few questions relating to this. And they're going to get a little bit harder, but this is what we mean by multiplying. We're taking groups of the same number. So 9 groupings of 10, that gives us, well, 10 added 9 times gives us 90. And the times tables that you've likely memorized by now just show us the main types of multiplications we get between the numbers 1 and 12. But hopefully now you understand a little bit more about what we mean by multiplying and how we can define this. It has very close ties to addition. It is a way of abbreviating my addition. It is a shortcut to addition. We'll talk about this a lot more in the following videos, but thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.